So today we're going to do the handover video on this Burstner Ixeo Time 590. We're going to start on the outside and then we're going to move on to the inside. So firstly, coming over to the passenger side, you can see that you've got your fill-up point for your diesel, which is just straight into there. And opening up the passenger door, you can see you've got your bonnet release catch, which is just here. Whilst I'm here as well, you've also got your Emm-Bee cab blinds fitted to this vehicle. To dislodge them, simply pinch the little clasp here and then pull down, lead from the bottom and connect it up via the magnetic strip on the side. You've got these for each of your windows at the front along with your big windscreen, and as I say, they just connect via a magnetic strip. My advice with these is if you lead from the bottom just like so, it will stop the Emm-Bee cab blind from getting caught. If you lead from the top, it often gathers at the bottom and can potentially rip. So just take a moment to just assess what you're doing. And as a rule of thumb with a motorhome, we do say that if anything does feel like it's being forced, you're probably doing something wrong. So just take your time to work it. Underneath your bonnet is your bonnet's, as I say, your bonnet latch. It's just in line with the Burstner badge. Flick that to lift up the bonnet. With your bonnet open, you can see that you've got your negative terminal, which is straight in front of you, as indicated by the sticker above. And your positive terminal is just located underneath this cap here. A little bit difficult to see on the camera, I can appreciate, but there's a little plus sign onto there. All you need to do is simply flick that up and connect it on. And that's the main things obviously that you need to know underneath here if you're ever jump starting the van. But just to point out a couple more things, you can see you've got your engine oil down here along with your dipstick. You've got your brake disc fluid, your engine coolant, your power steering fluid, and then finally in the corner there you've got your washer fluid for your wipers. Moving around the vehicle, you'll notice that you've got an awning on this van. Now what I'll do is I'll show you how the awning works on handover if you'd like. All you need is just a pole which will be somewhere in the vehicle, which will connect onto your awning. You'll notice this uses a Thule awning and it just connects into that T-bar there, and then you can wind the awning out. Now as a rule of thumb with the awning, if it is a windy day, we always recommend putting the awning in. Don't use storm straps or anything like that, because as you can appreciate, it's like having a massive sail on the side of the van. So if there's any bit of wind, it could potentially rip the awning and potentially damage your van. So if it is windy, send it back in. And obviously if it does get caught out in the rain, although it can be used in the rain, at some point you do need to obviously take that awning out and dry it out, because it could lead to mould. So just bear that in mind. Next up on this side, you've got a little bit of storage just underneath here, which is a good bit of storage actually. And in there it is heated. You've then got your habitation door, which is into the main body of the van, which we'll go through shortly. We've then got your fridge vents, which are on this side of the vehicle. Now, the fridge vents, what I recommend is if it is quite a warm day and you've got the sun beating down on this side of the van, if you can try and keep this area under shade by taking out the awning or flipping the van around, it will just allow the fridge to work a little bit more efficiently. You can also get winter covers for these, which just clip into the vent onto here, and will stop obviously anything getting in there. It's really good for when you're storing the vehicle, that is. Next up, you'll notice you've got a little cap that says Truma on. This is a barbecue point, which is all wired into your gas. So obviously you'll need your gas bottles in the vehicle. You can hook them up and then it just simply comes out from this area. Obviously you'll need your gas bottles on for this to operate. At the back, you've then got a bit of storage. In here, you'll notice you've got your tyre inflation kit and your jack, which is underneath there. In here as well, you can store, wet things. You've just got a little plug hole which you can remove, and obviously anything will drain out. And you've of course got your storage within the garage. One thing I will say before moving on is this vehicle hasn't had a valet yet, so just bear that in mind. I'm just trying to get this vehicle out to you before you come to collect. So just if you can see past any dirt, it'll all be sparkling for when you come and collect. Now in the back, on the back of this vehicle, you can see you've got a Fiamma Ultra box. Nice bit of storage in here. Obviously you just need a key for this to open, but you can obviously store everything in here. Just bear in mind, you know, what you're putting in here. This bike rack that it's actually set on will only take 60 kg, so just be mindful about, you know, what you're putting in the back there. You'll notice above that you've also got your reversing camera, just near the Burstner badge, and then right at the back underneath you've got two compartments. You've got your locker for your cassette toilet, and on the other side you've got a point, I believe that's for your shower. As you can see, I've just opened that up for you. You can see that that is in fact for your shower. You'll obviously need your shower head, which will be somewhere in the van, and that'll connect up until this, up until that. Obviously you'll need all your water on and your pump on for that to flow through, and then you've got a little switch there to turn it on remotely from the shower point itself. So next up is your cassette toilet. To access this, obviously unlock the locker, and all you need to do is pull up on the orange tab like so, and then slide the cassette out. What I'll do is I'll just remove it now and put it on the floor, but just before I do that, one thing to make clear is that you always need the cassette toilet and the blade on that cassette toilet to be closed before removing this. If that blade on the toilet is open, you'll come to remove that cassette, and what could potentially happen is it'll get stuck, and if you force that, it can potentially break the cassette, which, you know, isn't cheap. So you want to make sure that you don't do that. You don't want to damage any of the mechanisms inside, so please ensure that when you're actually using the vehicle, that blade is closed for when you come to remove the cassette. Now I'll show you how that is done on the inside of the vehicle, but it's just one thing to know. Again, like I said earlier, if it feels like it's being forced, you are probably doing something wrong, so just bear that in mind. Okie dokie, as you can see, the cassette has just been pulled out now. To empty this, all you need to do is pull the funnel out like so, remove that grey cap on the end, and push the orange button at the back there in. If you push that in, that will release an internal vacuum, which will allow all the contents of the cassette to flow out easily and steadily. And once you've done that, you can put a bit of water in here just through the funnel, just to obviously rinse it out. If you're using your blue fluid, the blue fluid can go straight into the top of this cap here. There's a little measuring device on there. Just put the blue fluid into there and then put it straight back in, and that will obviously clean the toilet and break down any waste that goes into the cassette. You'll also notice that you've got this orange lever here. This is what actually makes contact with the blade and opens and closes the cassette whenever you need it. So when you close that blade, this will turn. You always need to make sure this is in this position. When you've removed the cassette, it will have been in this position, so there's no need for you to obviously turn it or twist it. If that is off slightly, it will not allow you to put the cassette in, and obviously if you force it, it will result in you breaking the system. So please ensure that this remains like this at all times. There should be no need for you to turn that. As you can see, I've just slid the cassette back into place. The orange handle as well has just clipped into its centre there, so then you're all good for transit. Okie dokie, so we're now moving on from the back and onto the other side of the vehicle. You can see that you've got a locker here that indicates it's for your gas bottles. And as you can see, with that open, you've got space for your two gas bottles to be connected up. You'll notice you've got your metal regulator here with a little point on it there, so you'll need a pigtail for that to connect onto, and then from that pigtail you can then connect that into your gas bottles. When you're travelling, please ensure that your gas bottles are turned off at all times due to safety, and then when you are stationary on site and you're using the vehicle, turn them gas bottles on at the bottle, and then that will release the gas through the pigtail and into the vehicle. You'll also notice next up you've got like a little vent. It says Truma on there. This uses a Truma heating system, and in essence this is the vehicle's chimney. It does get quite hot, this, so don't hang anything on there, just be mindful of that area. Now just below that, before I move on to your convenience locker, you may notice that you have got a waste outlet here. So this is your drain down point for your waste tank, and you've got a little lever on here. Now there'll be a black lever located in the van, potentially in your convenience locker, which simply connects onto there, and you turn that, and that will release the waste water. Now this is the first drain down point that you've got, so when you're on site you'll have a big grid that you'll obviously drive over, then simply turn that using a lever and that will drain down the tank entirely. Obviously this is for when you are moving off site. Now you've got three main drain down points in the vehicle. You've got your wastewater drain down point, you've got your freshwater drain down point, and also your boiler drain down point. They're actually located in this convenience locker here. This is the only thing that's underslung, and with that you've got to bear in mind, if you are using the vehicle, that is the only thing that can potentially freeze. So in the colder months, what I recommend is leaving that tank open and just simply putting a bucket underneath for the water to drain out. The other systems you're fine with, because obviously when you're using the vehicle, they will only freeze if you freeze, so don't worry about that. But obviously underneath there, just be mindful to put a bucket underneath, because you don't want it to run the risk of it freezing. But going back onto that, as I was saying, this goes for all your drain down points. When you finish on site, simply drive over your grid, drain all the water down, and then leave them tanks open, because as you're travelling home, that water will come out thanks to the vibrations of the road. And at the end of the day, if you've drained down the majority of water, it'll only be a little bit more, little residual water that's coming out. And as you can appreciate, it's just dirty water, it's nothing harmful, so don't worry about that. Next up, as I mentioned, this is your convenience locker. So in here, you've got your freshwater tank, along with your drain down points, your boiler drain down point, and there's also another drain down point in here which drains everything from the boiler beyond. It's just an additional thing that you've got. Now firstly, filling up your freshwater tank. This tank will take 120 litres, and as indicated by the sticker there. To fill that up, simply remove the cap, and then using this black piece of plastic, that's an overspill cap, that goes onto here, and then using a food grade hose pipe you can then fill up the tank. Obviously when it's overflowing and it's coming out, you've obviously filled your tank. You'll also notice that you've got a red valve on here. You can remove that to clean the inside of the tank, but personally I don't recommend drinking out of the tank, and for that reason you shouldn't really need to clean this, because after all it's only fresh water that is going in there. But due to the plastic, I personally recommend taking bottled water. Obviously if you're boiling the water you're absolutely fine, but just bear that in mind. Now the drain down point for this, there's two settings on it. Can you see this black nib up here? All you've got to do to drain that down is turn it like so. You may have heard there was a bit of water coming out there. I think we're nearly all the way drained, hence why it's not draining any more out. But that will drain everything down to 20 litres. Now you won't be able to see this, but I can feel that there's a little lug. You might be able to hear it, which I've just turned past. If I turn back, and it stops at that lug. Now if you want, you can drain the entire tank down to 20 litres if you drain up to that lug, and you can feel there's a bit of resistance. If you so all you need to do is when you're on site, say for example you want to keep a bit of water in, say you're going on to a next site, the manufacturer recommend that you only travel with 20 litres due to payload and weight distribution. So with that in mind, drain it down to 20 litres if you do want water remaining in the vehicle. Now if you want to drain everything beyond that, so you want to drain the entire tank, say for example you're done using the motorhome, it's going back into storage, all you need to do is just drain past that. So just turn the valve, you can see it's releasing a little bit more water there. We're pretty much all empty in that tank anyway. I'll leave that open, but you can see that's just draining down that majority, and that will drain down the entire tank. Now next up, I'll just remove this this cap for you so it's easier to see. You've then got your electric hookup point. The electric lead runs through the bottom of the vehicle and connects up into this point. You need to always ensure that this is removed when travelling. So moving on from this, you've then got obviously your final drain down points. On here, this is your boiler drain down point. That far little toggle there, if I flick that up, that will drain everything from the boiler beyond to the taps. I'll leave that open. As you can see, that's just draining down. Now your boiler drain down point, you may have not known, but this is a frost protection valve, and as I say, this drains down the boiler. To drain down this manually, all you need to do is turn the diamond there. So there's a little nib that goes up on the inside, and there's a little blue tab that pops out on the outside. And in that position, the boiler is open, and as you can see, you've got your drain down points draining away. When you want to close this, all you need to do, turn the diamond like so the black nib goes on the inside, and press that blue tab in. And then obviously don't forget about that yellow tab at the bottom. Flick that down to close and complete the system, so you can then start pulling water through. Obviously to drain down, leave that up and flick this out. Now, the reason this is a frost protection valve is it actually reacts to temperature. So if it gets to a certain temperature, it will actually automatically trip. This reacts, as I say, and there's some solution in here that reacts to the temperature, and it will automatically do this. So it will automatically drain your boiler, which is a really good thing. It'll ensure that you don't get any frozen water in the system. I still recommend that you should get into the habit of obviously draining it down, but if you do forget, obviously it will drain its system down. Now, obviously you've got to bear in mind, because this reacts to temperature, if for example you've not used the vehicle in a while and then you come to use it and it's, you know, very cold, this will not allow you to close the system. So you'll go to turn the diamond like so, and you'll go to press that blue button in, but that will keep pinging out because it's so cold it doesn't want to freeze. Now you'll notice at the side of it you've got a pipe here. So if that ever happens, what you'll need to do is run into the inside of the vehicle. You'll need to heat the vehicle up, and I'll show you how to do that obviously later. But this area will then heat up. It'll take about 30 minutes, but once that's done, it will then allow you to push that tab in like so, and then seal the boiler. And it's just designed there just to ensure that you don't get any frozen water in this system. It's actually a really good design, but you just have to bear in mind, if you've not used the vehicle in a while and it is quite a cool day, you know, you may run into that issue. But as I say, I'll leave that open for you, just like so. Okie dokie, so that now concludes the outside of the vehicle, and we're going to move on to the inside of the van. So on the inside of the vehicle, just as you walk through your habitation door, you'll notice to the left of you, you've got your awning pole, which is located on the side there, along with your TV, and above from that, you've got your control panel. For your control panel, all you need to do is turn that on, like so, and you can see that actually turns on your lights on the inside of the vehicle. To the left of the control panel, you've got your battery voltage levels. Hold down on the front battery, that is an indication of your vehicle battery level. You can see on the panel here, it shows you that we're at 12 volts. For your leisure battery, that's in the back, and that's the black battery. Click that, or hold that rather, and that shows you your level, just over 12 volts again. You'll notice just above that, you've got an alarm button there. That's if there's ever a fault, that'll come on, so don't worry about that. And then onto the other side of the panel, you've then got a little plug which will light up again, and that'll indicate if you're plugged into electric. Obviously we're not at the moment, hence why it's not lighting up. And underneath that, you've then got your water level. So you've got your fresh water level up at the top, with nothing in at the moment because I've just drained it down. And then you've got your wastewater level at the moment, just there, and as you can see, we've got quite a bit in that. That just needs draining down. To the side of that, you've then got your pump button. Just simply click that on to obviously activate the pump. Now you should only turn the pump on when you've got water in the vehicle, and obviously if you're running it for a sustained length of time, it could potentially burn the pump out if you've not got any water in the van. So when you're on site, obviously fill up with water, get your 120 litres in, and then go to all of your taps, including your shower, and then turn them on and turn them to hot. What that will do is it'll pull water from the fresh water tank into the boiler and then out to the tap. Do this for all your taps, and it will spurt. They'll all spurt and splutter initially, but then when it's all, you know, running steadily, you prime your system for your hot water. Once you've done that, go to all your taps again, turn them to cold, and it will run. It will spurt and splutter, and then once all the airlocks are out of the system, it will run steadily, and then you've primed your system. Once you've done that, you can then leave your pump on, because on each of your taps you've got a micro switch which will activate and deactivate the pump for whenever you need it. The only time you need to turn that pump on, off rather, is when you've got no water in the vehicle. Now the reason I tell you to put it on hot first is that will ensure that water goes through the boiler and then goes out the tap. Your boiler in this vehicle holds about 10 litres. So if you can get water into that as soon as you arrive on site, and then turn your heating on, which I'll show you how to do later, that will give it a chance to obviously heat up. This boiler doesn't work the same as a boiler at home. It's not instant hot water, so it's going to take about 30 to 40 minutes to heat up 10 litres, depending on obviously what you're fueling the heater with. So with that in mind, if this is the first thing you do when you arrive on site, by the time you've got all your bits ready and you're ready to use your hot water, that should be nice and warm and ready to use. And as I say, just do that on all your taps. Coming back over to the control panel, that's pretty much it. But just to turn it on and off, you've got a little switch here. On is on this side, off is on that side. Dead simple. To the side of it as well, you'll notice there's a little sensor. It says trimmer on it. That's just for your temperature. And then you've got some switches down here, which allow you to turn on and off individual lights in the inside of the vehicle. Okie dokie, so we're going to start off in the kitchen area. We'll move on to the lounge after. In the kitchen, you can see you've got a really good bit of storage here, along with your hobs. Obviously, they run off gas. You've got a little igniter switch here to then feed the gas through. Please bear in mind that, like a hob at home, you will need to hold them in for a sustained period, even when it's lighted, or lit rather, because they each come with blow-off valves. So if you let go of them instantly, it'll just blow the flame out. On this side of the vehicle as well, you've got, as we say, your sink, and up at the top you've got your cutlery drawer. As I say, nothing's been valeted yet, so just please look past everything. But up in the top here, you'll notice there's some red switches. These are isolator valves, and they allow you to isolate certain areas of the vehicle. Now, you don't need to do anything with this. Everything you need to do is located in that panel and in the various systems that I'll show later on in the vehicle. So just, you know, you don't need to bother about these. These are only for when the technicians are working on the van, or if we advise you to turn them off. So just leave them open as they are. On the back end as well, you'll notice that you've got your key for your bed. I'll show you how to do that when we tackle your lounge, but I wanted to show you your heating system. So this is a Truma heating system. To turn this on, simply click on, and then everything below the line is what you want to select. Underneath here, you've got your temperature as your first option. Just use the dial just to select through the options, and then click in to select. Next up, you've then got your water temperature. You've got the option of Eco, Hot or Boost. If you're, say for example, if you're wanting 40 degrees approximately, run it off Eco. If you're running it off, if you want about 60 degrees, run it off Hot. And if the water temperature is struggling to get up to, up to temperature, if you like, what I recommend is sticking it on Boost. Now, bear in mind, it will only work that one once the heater's been working for about half an hour. But what Boost will do is it will try and concentrate on heating the water rather than heating the vehicle itself. So it will prioritise heating that. It will just get it up to temperature a bit quicker. Next up, you've then got your fuel, so you can run this off gas. Mix 1, which is a mixture of gas and 1 kilowatt electric. Mix 2, which is a mixture of gas and 2 kilowatt electric. EL1, which is just purely 1 kilowatt electric. Or EL2, which is just 2 kilowatt electric. So if you're on site, run it off obviously EL2 when you're plugged in. Certain sites may be limited, especially when you go abroad, to just EL1. Now, as you can appreciate, in a van of this size, trying to heat it off 1 kilowatt electric, especially water, it's just not going to do anything. So I recommend sticking it on either a mix 1 or just purely gas. And obviously when you're wild camping, you'll have it on gas anyway. In the colder time of year, I recommend using gas to get it up to temperature the quickest, and then you can then flick it over to electric, providing you've got power. Next up, you've then got your fan. At the moment, because I've got nothing selected, it's only given me the option of vent, which will recirculate the air in the vehicle. But if I've got something selected, I'm not going to at the moment because I've not got any power. But if I was to select, obviously, gas and then run the heating up to 30 degrees, it will give me the option of Eco, High or Boost. Eco is obviously the fan activated. High is just a more intensified version of Eco. And then Boost, like I described and explained about the boost for the water, it will do the exact same thing for the heating itself for the vehicle. So instead of heating the water, it will prioritise on heating the vehicle's heating. Coming back, we've then got a timer down here, so you can set a time for when you want the heater to kick in. You've then got your time. Obviously you can change the time on there that's displayed on the panel. And then finally in here you've got your settings. Now the main thing that you need to know in here is the reset button. There's a few things like language that you can change and brightness of the screen. Obviously that's all been programmed and set. The main thing that you need to know is where the reset is. It's just located in the settings panel right at the end. Now you'll need to reset the system, for example, if you get an error code on the panel. Now the reason you'll get an error code is, for example, what tends to be the issue is when you get a say for example you try and run the heating system from a fuel that you've not got. So say for example you try and heat the vehicle off gas, but you've not got any gas. So if I try to do that now, you'd get an error code because it's trying to fuel the vehicle with something that it hasn't got. So just bear that in mind. So with that in mind, obviously make sure if you do get that error code, go into the settings panel, scroll all the way to the reset, click reset, and that will reset the entire thing. You can flick through the options as well. It'll allow you to flick through a preset and everything. Just follow it, keep clicking, and that will reset the entire thing. Now the screen will flicker and it'll say initializing. It'll come back on after 30 seconds, but to perform a correct reset and a full reset, you'll have to wait about 20 minutes. So just bear that in mind. One thing to remember as well is to always turn this panel off. You do that by holding the button in, and eventually it'll say off. Always turn it off before you know, traveling on off site and moving on, because say for example you're running this off 230 volt electric and you remove that electric, well, with this still on, it will then fault and you'll get an error code, and it just means you have to reset the system. It's not too much of an issue, but it can turn into a bit of a pain, so just bear that in mind. So opposite the kitchen area, you can see that you've got your Dometic fridge. This is a three-way system, and it allows you to run the fridge off 3 types of fuel. So on here, you've got the option of running it off electric, so 230 volts. So when you're on site, select it off 230 volt. When you're wild camping, you can then run it off gas, which is indicated by the little gas flame. And then when you're travelling, you've got the option to run it off your leisure battery. Now, a lot of people think that they can run the fridge off your leisure battery when you're wild camping. That's not the case. It will not allow you to do that, because in essence, all that would happen is it would just completely sap the leisure battery of all of its energy, because your fridge does take quite a lot. So when you're stationary, it'll only allow you to run the fridge off your gas. As I say, when you're travelling, you can stick it on your 12 volt battery, because as you're travelling, you've got something called an alternator, which will send power from your vehicle battery to your leisure battery via that alternator, which will then power the fridge and allow you to run it off your 12 volt. Now, the great thing with this fridge, it's an up-to-date fridge. You've got a little A button here, that stands for auto, and that will automatically assign whichever fuel you've got in the vehicle. To turn it on, click that, and it'll light up blue and it'll all be activated. On the other side, you've then got your temperature gauge, so you can flick that depending on your temperature. And then you've also got a little warning triangle. That's if you ever want to reset the fridge. So you just hold that down and that will reset it. If you ever get to that point, just give us a call and we can get that sorted. What I recommend is, with the fridge, you've got your freezer up at the top and obviously the fridge below. I recommend putting cooled things in the fridge and frozen things in the freezer, as it does a very good job at maintaining the temperature of things, but not the best of jobs at getting it down to temperature. So just bear that in mind. It'll just allow you to obviously run the fridge a little bit more efficiently. Above the fridge as well, you've also got a microwave. In here, this is obviously strictly 230 volts, so please bear that in mind. When you're on site, this will work, but when you're wild camping and you're not hooked up, this will not work. It won't run off your 12 volt leisure battery, because obviously it's 230 volts, so just bear that in mind. Moving on, you can then see right at the back, you've got your toilet area, which is nice and spacious. You've also got a really good bit of storage in here, as you can see. Now you've got in the corner there your RCD breaker, so if the vehicle ever trips, you can come to this point here. And just above there, you've also got your Vision Plus aerial. So what that does is you simply flick it on like so. There's a blue light there that indicates, turns on, and then you are good to go. There's a little dial as well here where you can change the signal range, but you should be absolutely fine with that. Right in the back as well, as I say, you've got a bit more storage in there. And along here, in the back, there's a bit of storage there as well. Now we've discussed obviously about priming your system for all your taps, so you're fine with that. The main thing that we need to show you is that blade on the toilet. The blade that I refer to is this silver piece of plastic here. Currently it's in the closed position. If you slide that across, it is open. So when the cassette is in use, or when you're using the toilet, you need to open this. So slide the blade across, so that will open the cassette, so all the waste can then drop into the cassette. Once you've done that, click that blue button on the back. That will activate your flush, and that will allow you to obviously flush the system. Once you've done that, close the blade. Now you close the blade for two reasons. The main reason being is it stops any odours from escaping, but the second reason is it does get you into the habit of having that closed, so when you come to remove the cassette, you don't run into the issue of it getting stuck, as I discussed earlier. Coming back up to here as well, as I say, this blue button will activate your flush. Bear in mind, you will need your pump on for that to operate. Moving on, you've then got a bit more storage as well. Plenty of storage at the back that you can obviously access. Okie dokie, so we're now back in the front of the vehicle. With this vehicle, obviously you've got your drop down bed, which is just above, and as I discussed before, you've got your control panel here. You've two options with this bed. You can drop it either halfway or all the way down. If you're dropping it all the way down, it does require a little bit more work. What you'll need to do is remove these cushions, so this one, them two there, and remove this, so then you can flatten this into position, and that will allow you to drop the bed all the way down. On the table, you'll notice that you've got a little latch here which will allow you to slide it, flick that up to make sure that the table is sturdy into place. And if you're dropping it down, all you need to do is pull that and then apply a bit of weight onto the top of the table, and that will slot into this position here. And that will allow, as I say, the bed to drop down all the way. If you're dropping it only halfway, all you need to do, put the key in, turn it, press the button. If you drop it to the just there, as you can see, you can then get your ladders onto there and up it goes. You can drop it a bit lower if you wanted. You'll just need to remove this seat and push this back in. All your bedding can stay on here. What we recommend is leaving your pillows up at the top, but everything else can stay on, and then you are good to go. Just be mindful, obviously, you do need a little bit of a gap, so don't use a massive bit of bedding on here, because you don't, obviously, condensation, you want this area to breathe. And then obviously just click that button and up it goes. Now in the lounge area, you've also got two seat belts. We've just hidden them underneath this cushion for the time being. And you've also got a light switch there, obviously for the lights. Underneath this bench seat, there's no storage. That's where your water tanks are located, and your boiler. And as we say, there's a bit of storage underneath here which you can access on the outside of the van. The final thing that I need to tell you about is your fuses. Your fuses are actually located underneath your passenger seat at the front. They just slide out, so you can access them. I recommend taking, especially for your bed, some additional fuses. You can just get them from Halfords. Just take them with you, because if you do need them, obviously you have got them, so it's dead easy. And that concludes the handover video on this Burstner Ixeo. I hope you enjoyed.